These 18 Palestinians were killed and scores of others wounded in an attack launched by the Israeli occupation against a school sheltering displaced people in Beit Hanun. And those are the major developments now. The full news edition. Good afternoon. The Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, National Committee Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has conveyed messages to the presidents of Angola, Uganda and Burundi on behalf of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. Mariam Barshi has the details.
During an African tour undertaken as part of Algeria's effort to strengthen bilateral relations with African countries, the Minister of Foreign Affairs met with Angola's President, Mr. João Manuel Goncalves Lourenço, to whom he handed in a letter from the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, conveying his greetings and expressing his will to open up broader perspectives to relations of brotherliness, cooperation and solidarity between the two countries. The meeting made it possible to discuss the different aspects and axes of the privileged relations existing between Algeria and Angola, as well as the means of imbuing them with a new dynamic in anticipation of high-level bilateral events.
When you speak about Angola and Algeria, you automatically speak about excellent and exemplary political relations and the permanent worry to ensure that the economic dimension of this cooperation be at the level of the excellent political relations. We are getting ready to sign about 20 cooperation accords which concern fields of priority for both of us. Then we should set the institutional framework of this cooperation, the Joint Commission should meet and the Business Council should be created to allow for an interaction between Algerian and Angolan business communities.
The meeting was also an opportunity to examine the main issues and questions on the agenda of the African Union and to underline Algeria's full availability to provide all forms of support and assistance to President João Manuel Goncalves Lourenço during his term as rotating president of the Continental Organization starting next February.
Angola va présider l'Union africaine.
Angola will chair the African Union, and President Tebboune had assured his brother, President João Lourenço, that he will be at his side and that the success of the Angolan presidency will be a success for Angola, a success for Algeria, and a success for Africa as a whole.
Mr. Attaf also congratulated Angola for the reconciliation and peace reached between the DRC and Rwanda.
I am in Luanda on the eve of an important event for the Great Lakes region and an important moment in President João Lourenço's efforts to stabilize and bring security to the region through what we hope will be reconciliation and peace between the DRC and Rwanda. We therefore feel truly privileged and honored to be the first to be able to convey, on behalf of President Tebboune, our congratulations and encouragement to the sister Republic of Angola for this great event, to which we wish every possible success.
Earlier, Mr. Attaf was received in Kampala by the President of the Republic of Uganda, Mr. Yoweri Museveni, to whom he handed in a message from the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and conveyed his brotherly greetings and willingness to continue joint efforts aimed at boosting Algeria-Uganda relations. The meeting was an opportunity to examine the positive results made in the implementation of the decisions taken by the two leaders, namely President Tebboune and Museveni, during the latter state's visit to Algeria in March 2023. The two officials discussed the main issues on the agenda of the African Union, as well as current continental and international issues, including the developments in the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and the Middle East region in general, in addition to the decolonization process in Western Sahara. Also, as part of his African tour, Mr. Attaf also went to Burundi, where he was received on Thursday by the President of the Republic of Burundi, Mr. Evariste Ndayishimiye, to whom he handed in a message from the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The meeting was an opportunity to examine ways and means to implement the common will of the leaders of the two countries to promote relations between Algeria and Burundi through the adoption of concrete measures capable of boosting bilateral cooperation and strengthening joint coordination within the Continental Organization to address the various challenges facing African countries.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Minister of State for Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arqab, held talks in Kuwait with the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources of Egypt, Karim Ibrahim Ali Badawi, and the Libyan Minister of Oil and Gas, Khalifa Rajab Abdel Sadiq, shortly before the holding of the 13th meeting of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of the Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries. During the meeting with his Egyptian counterpart, Mr. Arqab discussed the bilateral cooperation relations described as historic and excellent, as well as the cooperation and investment opportunities between the two countries and ways of strengthening partnership, notably in the fields of energy, mining and renewable energies, in the presence of the Algerian ambassador to Kuwait and executives from both parties. The two sides hailed the investment and partnership opportunities in the hydrocarbon sector, including exploration and prospecting, field development and operation, refining, petrochemicals, marketing and distribution of liquefied natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, and the development of hydrogen. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and during his meeting with Libya's Minister of Oil and Gas, Khalifa Rajab Abdel Sadiq, Mr. Arqab discussed partnership and investment opportunities between the two countries in the various activities linked to hydrocarbons and electricity within the context of the resumption of Sonatrach's activities in Libya and their extension to oil services and training. Discussions also focused on ways of strengthening cooperation between the Libyan Energy Company, General Electric Company and Sonalgas, and on the prospects for their development through the study of electricity connection capacities between the two countries. The two parties praised the quality and solidity of relations between Algeria and Libya and between the companies of the two countries in the energy sector. The Minister of State for Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arqab, also held talks in Kuwait with the Qatari Minister of State for Energy, with whom he discussed cooperation and partnership relations between the two countries in the field of energy, notably hydrocarbons, and prospects to strengthen them. Miriam Barshi has the details.
The meeting came ahead of the 113th meeting of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, which kicked off today in the Kuwaiti capital. The two parties held the historic relations between the two countries, which have been further strengthened in recent years thanks to the sincere political will of the leaders of the two countries. While presenting the sector's development strategy, Mr. Arqab called on Qatari companies to continue to invest in hydrocarbons and petrochemicals and to create mutually beneficial partnerships within the framework of the new hydrocarbons law, which offers several advantages to investors. The two ministers also discussed other aspects of the cooperation relating to the exchange of expertise and cooperation in the field of mining in Algeria, notably the research, exploitation and production of mineral resources. For his part, the Qatari minister said he was very satisfied with the privileged relations existing between the two countries, stressing the great interest of Qatari companies in strengthening their presence in Algeria. He also praised the level of dialogue between the two countries within the framework of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum and the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and to the Middle East now. At least 18 Palestinians were killed and scores of others wounded in an attack launched by the Israeli occupation against a school sheltering displaced people in Beit Hanun in the northern part of the enclave.
Local sources were quoted by media saying that the Israeli assault on the school has forced women, children and elderly to flee towards the town of Gaza. Earlier, several people were killed in a similar attack launched by the Israeli army against Gaza, targeting an UNRWA-run school sheltering displaced. According to the news agency Wafa, several others were wounded in the Israeli attacks, which also hit the municipality building in the central town of Deir el-Balah. This came as thousands of people rallied in several cities across the world to denounce the Israeli aggressions on Gaza. Demonstrations were staged yesterday in London, Oslo, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Paris and Geneva to press for an end to the one-year-long war on Gaza and for the lifting of all restrictions hampering the delivery of humanitarian aid. In this connection, UNICEF called for a global action to stop the Israeli continued acts of aggressions against Palestinian children. The UNICEF Executive Director, Catherine Russell, affirmed that the children of Gaza were not responsible for the situation they are confronted to and do not have the capacity to act, although they are paying the higher cost for their lives and future. She stressed that the world could not remain idle in the face of sufferings of children who are lacking care and protection at a time when famine still threatens the northern part of Gaza.
Still in the Middle East and in Lebanon, the authorities have affirmed that more than 220 ceasefire violations have been carried out by the Israeli occupation since the accord on cessation of hostilities came into force last November. The Health Ministry was quoted by media saying that since the 60-day-long ceasefire was enforced, 30 people were killed and more than 30 others wounded in Israeli attacks that targeted several areas of Lebanon. And in Niger, 39 villagers, including women and children, were killed in a double attack carried out by presumed terrorists against two localities in the western part of the country near the border with Burkina Faso. The announcement was made by the Niger army, blamed the attacks perpetrated in the localities of Liberi and Kokoro on criminals who assaulted defenseless populations. In this respect, the authorities reiterated their commitment to take all the necessary measures to track down those behind such crimes and to reinforce security across the country. And in Sudan, 9 people were killed in an attack carried out by the Rapid Support paramilitary forces on the main Romanian hospital in Al-Fasher in the western province of North Darfur. The State Health Minister Ibrahim Khatir said that a drone fired 4 missiles at the hospital, destroying wards and facilities. Let's recall that since May 10th, violent clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support forces have been raging in the capital of North Darfur province and Al-Fasher. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 2:43 minutes Algiers time, and I invite you now to listen to the international event of the week.
The international event of the week.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed deep concerns at the attacks carried out this week by the Israeli army against targets in Syria, calling for an Israeli troop withdrawal from the strategic Golan Heights occupied by Israel in 1967 and annexed in 1981. In a statement issued this week, the UN chief said he was deeply concerned by the recent and extensive violations of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said he was particularly concerned over the hundreds of Israeli airstrikes on several areas of Syria, calling for an urgent de-escalation on all parts throughout the country. The Israeli air campaign mainly targeted armed stockpiles, military facilities and assets such as airfields, as well as naval vessels of the Syrian coast. Asked if the Israeli occupying authorities were taking advantage of the latest developments in Syria to deliberately target the country's national defense capability, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi had this to say.
The deliberate destruction of the Syrian defense capabilities is designed to shift the balance of power away from the axis of resistance, as they called, and towards the Zionist states and the United States. It is aimed at weakening Syria by destroying its defense system and infrastructure to make it more vulnerable to Israel's annexation plan, reduce any future Syrian government capacity to impose order and security in the face of internal and external threats, thereby creating further conditions for instability and potentially civil war, which Israel believes it could be to its benefit. This also gives Israel a free and safer passage to violating Syria's territory, as we have seen so far. The strikes in this context are all intended to curb Syria's scientific research in the future as well. Israel destroyed the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Center in Damascus and so many other research facilities. On the regional level, Israel's hope is to change the balance of power to its favor, taking Syria from the equation Israelis think would strengthen their position against the resistance in Gaza, Lebanon, and ultimately weaken Iran's ability, which they believe is a threat to their security. However, these are only Israel's pretexts or hopes, because in reality, as time and time again, Israel's design plans have not slowed down the resistance. To the contrary, it has given the resistance more resolve and strengthened to fight against its imperial design. As the UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric stated, the United Nations is against these types of attack, adding that Syria's neighbor should be respectful of its territory.
Reports affirm that the Israeli forces took control of a military outpost overlooking the Golan region, as well as other parts of the separation area set up between Israel and Syria as part of the 1974 Disengagement Forces Agreement. This maintains the ceasefire between the Israeli and Syrian forces in the Golan Heights and supervise the areas of separation or buffer zone existing between the two countries. In this connection, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres recalled that the disengagement agreement remains in force and must be respected by ending all unauthorized presence in the separation area and by refraining from any action that would undermine the security and stability in the Golan region. Asked if Israel's reinforced presence in the strategic region it annexed in 1981 is part of its plan aimed at reshaping its borders allegedly for security reasons, our political analyst Hamid Salhi has the following.
Israel has a history of expanding its borders illegally, and especially during times of war. The current case is no exceptions in Syria. Israel is capitalizing on the situation in this country to gain strategic leverage, positioning itself to further advance its annexation of Syrian territory and exploitation of its rich natural resources, including oil, agricultural land, and water. This was the plan since it annexed the Golan Heights in 1967. After the 1973 war, Israel violated the 1974 disengagement agreement it had signed with Syria over the Golan Heights. A credible report in 2018 found that Israel had plans to expand its buffer zone deeper into the Syrian territory, beyond what the terms of the 1974 agreements stipulate. This week, reports circulated that the Israeli troops are well beyond the buffer zone and well into the Syrian-Lebanese borders, putting them as less than 27 kilometers from Damascus. To further reshape its borders, Israel imposed Israeli law on the Golan Heights population recently, built new settlements and took control of the water resources, while advancing into neighboring town to annex also their land, water, and oil fields. In 2019, President Donald Trump then recognized Israel's control of the Golan Heights. Of a significant of this recent development, and which speaks volume to Israeli design, is the capture of Jabal Sheikh, the highest mountains in the region. It captured it from the UN peacekeeping forces. This is illegal by international norms. But these controls will give Israel the early warning capacity of any attacks claiming against them, and it makes it more lethal to further control Syria and undermine its sovereignty with the purpose of weakening it and taking control of its full territory, as some reports suggest.
The development in Syria triggered off many reactions, notably by the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who said that the people of Syria could seize an historic opportunity to build and determine a stable and peaceful future. He called for the support of the international community to see to it that any political transition meets the aspirations of the Syrian people, stressing the necessity to restore Syria's sovereignty, unity, independence, and territorial integrity. However, restoration of peace and security remained linked to an improvement of the humanitarian situation in Syria. According to the UN, 7 out of 10 Syrians are in need of humanitarian assistance. It affirmed that more than 6.9 million had been displaced, whereas more than 5.4 million others sought refuge abroad, notably in Lebanon and Jordan. Asked on whether the UN Secretary General's plea for support would be heard by the international community, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi commented the issue.
As a full member of the United Nations, Syria's territorial integrity and sovereignty must be respected and at all cost. A recent declaration of the international community are therefore in line with the legitimate aspiration of the Syrian people. This is stated clearly by the United Nations Secretary General last week, who concluded that it is the path to peace, and one may add, the only path. This is also confirmed, also the sovereignty of Syria is also confirmed by several United Nations resolutions, including United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254, issued in 2015, and which clearly reaffirmed the United Nations Security Council commitment to the, quote, sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic, and the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, end quote. But Algeria's foreign affairs statement, the latest, goes further by condemning the Zionist state's decision to terminate the disengagement of forces agreement and seizing the buffer zone in the occupied Golan Heights. Algeria has has further condemned Israeli attacks on Syrian territory, a clear interference in Syrian internal affairs, and further undermining its sovereignty, and all in violation of international law. For the sake of the Syrian people, the international community, in particular United Nations Security Council, must take a strong stand against the Israelis and hold them responsible for their action before international law. Syrian sovereignty must be respected at all costs.
This week, Algeria's representative to the UN expressed concerns at the deteriorating humanitarian and security situation in Syria, saying that the Syrian crisis can be settled only through political means.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Thamani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. Algiers has a number of fascinating landmarks and attractions within walking distance of one another, offering visitors the opportunity to enjoy parts of the city at a leisurely pace. One of the suggested routes to walk starts at the historic Palais de Rais bastion with its view of the inner port of Algiers and the lighthouse built by the infamous Barbarossa. From there, visitors can walk a route that includes Dar al-Hamra, the Convert Marketplace, the Museum of Popular Arts and Traditions, the 16th century Hammam Sidna, and a number of classic Algerian houses, some of which once housed the French governor of Algeria and other officials prior to Algerian independence. Considered to be one of the most important historical monuments of the city of Algiers, Palais des Reyes is an extension of the city's Kasbah and was a commercial hub in the past. The initial buildings, which later developed into the palace, were constructed in 1576 by the Dey of Algiers as a defensive structure between the growing Kasbah and the port. The palace, as it is seen today, was reportedly constructed between 1750 and 1798 by the Dey of the time and became home to a number of different groups over the subsequent years, including the Consulate of the United States, a school, and the Duke of Aumale, before being turned into a library. Homeless families claimed the building in 1962, remaining there until 1980. The Ministry of Culture set about restoring the historic building. It was opened to the public as a monument and museum, as well as the Center for Arts and Culture in 1994, and is used as the venue for a wide range of cultural events.